Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Joining us back on the program today is someone who's going to be sharing some really wonderful information about how men out there can actually build their hormone levels naturally without using bioidentical hormones. Sprouted foods are hormones-rich greens that are very simple to grow on your windowsill, according to our guest. We evolved on plant hormones and have receptors in our cells seeking them. So we're going to find out what are the right things to use and how we can do that for ourselves as we welcome our guest, Sally Holloway. Sally, thank you for being on the program today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Hello.
Tell us how you got started in all this.
Well, basically, I was just a bean sprouter, and I started giving talks on how to sprout beans and seeds to other people. And then because the talks were going quite well, I started doing some research into it. And when I hit menopause, I knew that some of the sprouted foods had plant hormones, that I decided to look up the actual science about it, and it was stunning. And the reason there was so much science is that they use sprouted foods to create drugs and supplements to sell to women. I'm so sorry, that's my dog in the background.
Everybody gets excited about sprouting.
He has some sprouts in his dinner, which is why he's nearly 14 and very lively. There was so much evidence about it, but none of the studies said, do you know what, you can grow this yourself. None of them. And then the other thing was looking at traditional cultures. They all have a rich tradition of sprouted foods, sprouted cress in our own culture, sprouted mung beans, and these all add little hormonal top-ups every day for people that we're just lacking in our diets now, and is part of the overall problem with health. So I came from a sprouting angle, really, just to get people sprouting.
Now, I know that you talk a lot about women, and sprouting as far as that goes. So let's talk about how men can go about doing this. What actually happens?
What happens when we sprout?
Right.
Okay, so when you sprout a seed or a bean, as opposed to just putting it in a cooking pot or grinding it up, the first thing that happens is anything in the shell that's the toxins that are there to stop insects eating it gets sloughed off. And it's all these they call them anti-nutrients in the shells or the husks that cause digestive problems. That's why if you eat a lot of beans, you might get a lot of winds. But sprouting them actually gets rid of that, so that's the first thing. The second thing is the germination process massively increases the vitamins and minerals inside the little seed or bean, and that is to feed the growing plant, and they are broken down into the absolute simplest forms so that the plant can absorb them, but that's when we eat them. And so we're getting maximum digestibility, maximum vitamin minerals, and none of the toxins. So it's just a fantastic thing to do.
Now let's talk about how plant hormones work.
Okay, so they're really fascinating because what they can do is both top us up or calm us down. So let's take plant estrogen, for example. If you've got too much estrogen in your body, the plant estrogen will be attracted to our calming receptors. It will attach to our calming receptors and will give a really tiny dose of estrogen just to keep everything calm. But if we don't have enough estrogen, it will be attracted to our stimulating receptors and give a much bigger dose. And this is why I say it's nature's HRT, because it can balance us, which is almost a miracle, really, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was also thinking, too, when you consider things about that are available out there, it seems that a lot of people are recommending using bioidentical hormones. And so when we take a look at this natural way of approaching things, how much more effective is this, or is it more effective than going that direction?
Well, that's a really huge debatable point because there's not enough research in either of them to know what the difference is. There hasn't been any comparative research. And what I say when people ask me is this, that sprouted foods are the most natural thing you can do, and it's got to be the first port of call if you've got some hormonal problems, because that's nature's way. It's been used in herbalism, and it's been used for thousands of years, and it can't do you any harm. So, and you can experiment on yourself. You can read up about them, grow yourself some, and start taking them, and just see what happens. Now, with bioidentical hormones, they're very often made from plants and sprouted foods anyway, because sprouted hormones or plant hormones generally have the same molecular structure as our own hormones. And so all they're doing is really condensing them, and they're taking the actual hormones out of its natural environment. And what many scientists now think is that when we eat something in its natural form, there's all these what's called cofactors that help us digest, and the body recognizes them. And sometimes the body can get overwhelmed if you extract something from plants, put it into a supplement, and then give the body a big dose. Now, not to say that bioidentical hormones don't work, because there's lots of evidence that they do, but what they will be is much less natural than doing it by sprouting or eating. You can, in fact, eat lots of estrogenic and progesteronic foods. I always say sprouting just because it gives you a lovely little top-up, and it's very easy. But, yeah, there's lots of ways of doing this quite naturally. And, yeah, it's got to be worth a try. That's my sort of message.
Absolutely. Now, when you think about the plant hormones, are they the same as the hormones in the environment that we hear in pesticides and plastics, or are they different?
Oh, they're very, very different, yes, because there are what's called hormone mimics in all sorts of chemicals and industrial-produced compounds, the most famous probably being BPA. And what these do, these have a molecular structure very different from our own hormones and from plant hormones, but they've got enough of a similarity that they can cling to our hormone receptors, and they can either block them so nothing else can get on them, or they can, and this is really insidious, they can send the wrong message. Now imagine if your body is bombarded with them, with all your hormone receptors sending out the wrong message, and you start to see why they are so dangerous. And studies by the World Health Organization show that men who've got more of these toxins in their bodies have inferior sperm. And they call it inferior when they're deformed, when there's less of them, and they're not as mobile. You know, they can delay puberty in boys. They can attack sex organs. They're just absolutely terrible. Whereas what plant hormones do, as I said, they balance us. They've got the same molecular structure as our own hormones. And the other really exciting thing is once they're in the body, they compete with any of these harsh chemical estrogens to attach to our receptors. So the more plant hormones you've got, the less likely you'll get these horrible hormones onto your receptors. So, they're very different.
Now, I know there's a lot of talk, a lot of advertising, and you name it, it's all out there now about erectile dysfunction. So how can plant testosterone help with that, if possible?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, if I may say. So there's been some studies done by supplement manufacturers, and that have proven that fenugreek, which is something that's very easy to sprout, but I'm sure you've heard of it, it's a kind of Indian spice used in lots of kind of Asian cookery, that fenugreek extract can help erectile dysfunction and raise testosterone levels. And the problem with these studies is they were sponsored by the supplement industry. So we can't take them as definite, and the courts have ordered these companies. They haven't had to take their claims away completely, but they've just had to lessen their claims, make them a bit more moderate until there's more research. But the exciting thing as a sprouter is that fenugreek has been used for thousands of years in all sorts of different traditional medicines for exactly that, for erectile dysfunction. So the fact that they are getting some results is fantastic. And secondly, when men have any kind of penile dysfunction, they now know that it's linked to overall health. You cannot have that in isolation unless it's psychological. And so the other great thing about sprouted foods is that they add a wealth of really interesting compounds and trace elements that are really missing from our diet. And there is a really recent study, 2018, looking at sprouted fenugreek, obesity, diabetes, and it came out with fantastic results. I mean, they were eating quite high doses. I think it was 25 grams a day, but that's very easy to grow. So erectile problems are, very much a target for this kind of supplement industry at the moment, because lots of people are looking at that. And again, I say, with the sprouted foods, it's something you can just try, and it's not going to do you any harm, and it can add to your overall health. So I think there's going to be more studies going on into this, and I'll be keeping abreast of them.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about the kinds of sprouts to do. What kinds of plants are we talking about sprouting here, and how do we go about it?
Okay, so the best sprouts are the ones that fit into your lifestyle, and the easiest ones to grow are probably beans such as mung and lentil, and you literally just soak them overnight, pop them in a tray or a bag, and water them twice a day, and they will be ready in 2 days. Beans are incredibly good for heart problems. And sprouted, they've got lots of vitamin C and trace elements and protein. So, and they're very easy. For what I call baby green, and this is where you grow them without water for about 5 to 7 days till they have a double leaf. The easiest ones to grow are probably fenugreek, which is great because that's the one I've been talking about for all these different hormonal problems. And fenugreek, you get a little sprouting tray. It needs holes in the bottom because it likes to root. You don't even have to soak them overnight. You just put them in your tray and you water them twice a day. And make sure you drain them because seeds can drown. And then they're done in, like I say, 5 to 7 days, and it depends on the temperature. In colder temperatures, they just take a little bit longer. And then once they're done, you pop them in the fridge, and they'll keep for 4 or 5 days. And the other interesting thing about fenugreek is that you can eat it at any stage because we use the seeds anyway in cookery. So if you want to eat them at a couple of days, you can. I mean, you could just have them in your tray and be kind of picking at them, really. I always think, because fenugreek can lead a bit of a fenugreeky smell, which tends to come out of the armpits, I try and grow them to double leaf and then get rid of the seeds because I think that's where it's most concentrated. Because there's no point having all wonderful hormones and being all bubbly if you smell, is there?
I was just thinking about all this and just realizing, it couldn't really hurt to go this direction because, as you said, it's natural, and I know that I do some sprouting when I do my smoothies, and I notice that I have better energy. I actually feel better.
Absolutely, and the anecdotal evidence about fenugreek and libido is really powerful. And when I say powerful, it's because I'm my own anecdote. I've been trying it, and I noticed the difference. And I started giving my friends trays of fenugreek and saying, have these, tell me what happens. And they're all saying the same thing. And like I say, it's been used in all the different medicines. So, and if it doesn't work for you, I mean, there are reasons why, and that's because to get plant hormones really going in our bodies, you need the right gut bacteria, because our gut bacteria converts compounds within the sprouts into the plant hormones. So this is a very evolutionary process. We evolved alongside them, and we put them in, and our gut bacteria does the rest. So, and you need good liver function, and so I always say to people, if you've had antibiotics or anything like that, you might want to take them with a bit of yogurt to make sure they ferment, and you get your plant hormones.
Now, what do you consider the best sprouts for men to use?
Well, I think for general good health, I think cress, I'm sure you know that cress for thousands of years was used as a side dish, and it's very much gone out of fashion. And it's a lovely, spicy little top-up to any meal, and it's the easiest to grow. You grow it on paper. The paper holds the water, which means you don't have to water it as much, and they look great in your kitchen with a little plate of cress growing. So cress is good for general health. Mung beans, again, any kind of bean is good for hearts. For hormones, I always say fenugreek. For cancer, or if you're got a family history of cancer and you're wanting some protection, it's broccoli or cress. And for menopausal women, I say red clover. But we're talking about men today, aren't we?
Oh, we'll talk about both. Why not let it be a show that helps everybody?
Okay. Well, I think I've already been on your show talking endlessly about red clover.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, does this help with male andropause, as they call it?
Now I haven't got much evidence on that. What I have got evidence on is that about sprouted foods and plant hormones raising testosterone levels. Now, in my book, I talked about plant estrogen and plant progesterone, but I wasn't sure whether plant testosterone existed. And what I've discovered since is that plant testosterone does exist, but it's not called that. It's called plant androgens, and it covers everything. It covers DHA, testosterone, and all the different forms of testosterone that there are, which make up male hormones. So, and what we know is that they can attach to androgen receptors, and like I was talking about earlier, either top up or calm down. So that has got to be a good thing for decline in testosterone in the body. And there is quite a lot of evidence about plant androgens now, and they are in sprouted foods. And again, they're in fenugreek. And interestingly enough, some of the plant estrogens also act as a plant androgen, which is fantastic because it means all the women that are doing this for their menopause can give them to men as well. It was very much seen that red clover was a women's sprout or women's remedy, but actually it's got everything in there for men too. So I think in terms of andropause, that in itself will help, yes.
This is very exciting, especially for people to realize that they can hopefully reverse, the symptoms of andropause and menopause as well, naturally. And as we've talked about going this direction, couldn't hurt because, there's really no bad side effects to give it an attempt and just see where it takes you.
Absolutely not. And andropause is also linked to overall health as well. And when we talked about all the hormone mimics in the environment, I mean they really do attack our ovaries, our testes, and it can cause all sorts of problems that will make growing older harder. So that doing the natural thing, having a great diet, having a top-up of sprouts and hormones, and like you with your smoothies, it's all wonderful, yes.
Well, Sally, thank you for coming on the program to share this information. Is there a book out there people can find and a website people can visit to find out more about your work?
My website is Grow Your Own HRT, and I've got one article up there about men, plant hormones, and prostate cancer, because plant hormones in broccoli and cress in particular, and other compounds in them are particularly wonderful for halting the growth of prostate cancer. So that's up there. And what I'm going to try and do is all this information I've given you today, I'm going to write it up and put the references, because I think that's really important, especially in alternative medicine where people say, oh, is it bunkum? And go, no, look, here are the studies. So that's what I'm intending to do over the next week.
Well, Sally, again, thank you for being on the Beyond 50 radio program today. And the website again?
It's growyourownhrt.com.
Very good. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Bye.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.